Hey Pokedad Fan Club, it's me, Pokedad, and today we're looking at Trevenant Break. Now, I know that this has already become a very popular deck, so this is my take on Trevenant Break. A lot of people have been using a lot of different things, Crobat, Gengar, the baby Gengar, but I've decided to go a little different route. I'm just going with a pure Trevenant line with Shaman support, and then that's all I'm doing. And we're playing Disruption. Um, all right, so let's just take a look at Trevenant. Trevenant came from XY base set. It has only one attack, Tree Slam, for a Psychic and a double colorless, does 60 damage, and then it does 20 damage to two of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So it's has the ability to hit the bench. But the big thing that's really nice about Trevenant is Forest's Curse, and that's an ability. When he's in the active, he basically locks all your opponent's items. So it's another form of item lock. Right now, I think we have three forms of item lock, if I'm not mistaken. Trevenant here is one of them, Seismitoad's Quaking Punch, and then Vileplume. So Trevenant is one that hasn't been used a whole lot simply because dark decks have been so prevalent in the meta. And I would say that this is still going to be a tough match against any dark deck simply because dark decks really tend to fight through item lock pretty easily. There are other decks that don't fight as well with item lock, but dark decks tend to do that. So this is still a tough matchup. But in general, against most of the other decks, we do very well. We do well against Night March. We do well against Fairies and Steel. We do well against other psychic types, especially because we can hit them for weakness, but they can't hit us for weakness. We do well against fighting types because we resist them. So overall, this is a pretty good deck, and it's already gotten quite a bit of hype. Seen a lot of these decks online already. So anyway, this is one of our attacks, but really we want to move to Trevenant Break, which is the new card from Breakpoint, and he adds, the big thing I like about Trevenant Break is he moves our HP to 160. Okay, so over here we only have 110, but if we can get to the break, we have 160 HP, so he can tank a lot of attacks better than just the regular Trevenant can. The attack also is one that we really like, even better than Tree Slam in most cases, because Silent Fear for a Psychic and a colorless drops 3 damage counters on every single Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field. So that's really awesome, because then we can just start taking knockouts, especially on the lower level stuff like the support Pokemon. We can begin taking knockouts, and you really think about this, it only takes 4 of these to take a Shaman on the bench out, and we're going to be disrupting the opponent's hand so much that doing 4 Silent Fears is no big deal. Now this is a control deck because we're item locking and we're going to use energy disruption. So these games tend to go into the longer turns. This is not an aggro deck. This is not going to get you a 1-turn knockout most of the time. And that's just how Trevenant rolls. Alright, before we go further though, let's talk about Phantom, because Phantom, this is the one from Breakpoint also, and it's really, really good. It has for a colorless energy, has Ascension, which literally lets us search our deck for Trevenant and evolve to Trevenant. And if we're playing Dimension Valley, this can actually be done for free. Now we usually want to try to get an energy drop going so that we can begin attacking as quickly as possible. But if we don't, we still, without an energy, but we have Dimension Valley, we can still get the Trevenant going, which allows us to get into the item lock right away. And many times we can do it on turn 1 if we're going second, We also have the way to do it if we're on turn 1 if we're going first, and that is through Wally, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more momentarily. Alright, we also do play 3 Shamans. It might even be worth playing 4 Shamans in this deck, but 3 gives us a good setup because sometimes on the first turn we really need to go through a good 10 to 15 cards just so that we can make sure we get the Trevenant going on turn 1, whether we're going first or second. So setup just comes in really handy here. Alright, so let's talk about our item cards and our supporters. So I've decided with my build that we're going to mainly focus on 3 types of disruption, okay? Item lock is the first disruption. The second one is going to be energy disruption. We're going to try to deny them energy with 4 crushing hammers and 1 enhanced hammer. Alright, 4 crushing hammers, flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy on any of your opponent's Pokemon, save for those ones that have Omega Barrier. So remember that. Enhanced Hammer, discard a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then we also do actually play 1 Team Flare Grunt, and we're playing 4 VS Seekers, so we can always respam Team Flare Grunt if we need it. It's pretty good to get, you know, again, to knock off another energy to help us continue to get more and more attacks going before they can really hurt us. Alright, so that's one of our energy denial, item lock, and then we are playing 1 delinquent. Now, I was going to play red card and all that, but there's really not enough room. But the 1 delinquent is good enough so that if we are at a point in the game, especially if they're playing stadiums, because we really don't want to use this on our own stadiums, but if they're playing their stadium, we can use delinquent to discard their hand by 3 cards. And believe it or not, you'd be surprised. Some people say, well, they'll just keep the supporter. Let's say they've got 4 cards in their hand and they've got Sycamore and 3 others. Well, obviously they're going to keep Sycamore so they can use it for the next turn. Yes, that is true. Here's the thing though, if they're holding 3 energies or an evolution and 2 energies and that Sycamore, they have to decide, is that evolution important to get going, or the energy is important to get going? And so for that reason, delinquent can still come in handy even if we don't necessarily knock their draw support out of their hand. If they only have 3 cards in hand though, delinquent comes in really handy too, because then you know you're going to put them in top deck mode. Alright, alright, so let's just take a look at a couple more of the item cards and we'll go into the supporters too. Alright, so Battle Compressor. Now the reason we want to do this is we want to, if we can get Battle Compressor with a VS Seeker on turn 1, we can get the Wally going. And if we get the Wally going, that guarantees that we're going to have Trevenant turn, which gets the item lock going. So we want to Battle Compress a Wally and a Sycamore and maybe one of our other supporters. We've got Judge and Lysander and some of these others that can help us, you know, these techie supporters. Put them in the discard pile, and then when we actually need them, we can VS Seeker for them. So that's why we play 2 Battle Compressors. It probably wouldn't hurt to, you could even bump this up to 3. We play Super Rod just because a lot of times we do have to Sycamore through cards, maybe a Trevenant Break or a Trevenant, and so we need to be able to get those guys back in, or some energy back in later in the game, and so Super Rod helps us accomplish that. So we play 1 of those. Playing 2 Trainer's Mills here. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. And you may reveal a trainer card you find there. Again, I wish I could play more of these. I'd love to bump that up to 4, but just space limiting and other things that I think are more important require us to only play 2 of those. We do play 4 Ultra Balls. We could play repeat balls and level balls, except that we wouldn't be able to grab Shaman. Sometimes it is necessary for us to Ultra Ball for a Phantump, and sometimes that seems like a little bit of overkill. But it does reduce our hand so that we can use the Shaman and get more draw from Shaman. So it's not always that bad. As I mentioned before, we do play 4 VS Seekers, so we can VS Seeker for a supporter that we need later on. And then, like I said, we play 1 Delinquent, 1 Judge. Both players shuffle his or her hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. With an item lock, this can be very useful because then the opponent could be stuck with 4 items. So that could be useful right there, especially if they have a big hand. 1 Lysander. We're really mostly going to be hitting the Silent Fear. So Lysander doesn't come into play as much in this deck as it would, say, in others. But, you know, every now and then we need to Tree Slam, and it's good to maybe bring up a Shaman and take 2 prizes on it. So Lysander can help us in that capacity. We also play 4 Sycamores. That's just standard. We need to discard our hand and draw 7 cards. It's going to help us get through our deck quickly. We talked about the 1 Team Flare Grunt already. And then 2 Wallies help us to get that turn 1 Trevenant. Now, some people play even 3 Wallies or even 4 Wallies. I would love the luxury of it, but the thing is when you have the Ascension, if you're going second, it makes more sense to just Ascension for the Trevenant than to Wally for it. So that allows you to use something like a Sycamore or some other supporter for the turn instead of not needing Wally. And so for that reason, I feel like I'm still getting Wally consistently enough if I need it on turn 1 to get the Trevenant out. If for some reason, though, I don't, I know that I'll get it out on turn 2, and so I'm okay with that if I whiff the Wally. So I'm only playing the 2, but still, with the battle compressors and the Shamans allowing us to draw, oftentimes we still run into that Wally. We do play 4 Dimension Valley just simply because this stadium is so important to our deck. With Tree Slam, it keeps us to only have to use 2 energies on Trevenant, and with Silent Fear, it helps us so that we only need 1 energy to attack with him. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. Alright, so for that very reason, we have we play 4 Dimension Valleys. Now, this is my secret weapon, Bursting Balloon. I know not many people have used this successfully, but I really, really love this card in this deck. See, Trevenant doesn't hit for a whole lot. I mean, 60 damage is not a whole lot. And 30, even though we're hitting 30 on everything, it's not a lot of damage. So we're relying on several things. We're relying on keeping our opponent's energy down, keeping them from being able to use their cards. And then this also adds another counterbalance to our deck. See, a lot of times because we're knocking energy off of them, they're going to be having to use smaller level attacks to hit us, which does 2 things. First, it allows us to stay in the game a little bit longer before we get knocked out. And secondly, it makes them have to think twice before they hit us when a Bursting Balloon is on there. I mean, if they're only going to hit me for 50 and they're still going to take 60, sometimes it's not in their best interest to do that. And so that alone, and I don't care if they hit me and they take the 60 damage, I'm okay with that. If they don't attack me, that's okay too. I am totally okay with the Bursting Balloon doing nothing. Okay, now for those of you who don't know, if you attach this to one of your Pokemon and you discard it at the end of your opponent's turn, so you only get to use it for 1 turn. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is your active Pokemon and is damaged by an opponent's attack, you put 6 damage counters back on them. So like I said, if they hit me, good, they're going to take 6 damage counters. If they don't hit me, I'm okay with that too, even if it seems like a waste of a card. So Bursting Balloon, we play 4 of those. I've even considered trying to squeeze in 1 Echo Arm, but really the game usually doesn't last long enough for us to need multiple copies of this, more than the 4 we have. And I found out most people will go ahead and attack into it anyway. So there you have it. That's my secret weapon in the Trevenant deck. We also do play 2 float stones. If we are going to start Shaman, we only got 7 basics here. So that means we're probably going to mulligan a little bit more than normal, and we're going to hit Phantom more than 50% of the time, but still probably a good 40% of the time we're going to hit Shaman. And when we do, we need to have a float stone to be able to get Shaman out of the active. So we play 2 float stones. We also play 8 energies, 2 mystery energies, and 6 psychic. I've really been debating about this. This might actually even be, we could even potentially just move this all to psychic. And here's the reason. If we don't get a float stone, we're going to have to attach to Shaman and retreat that way, because we don't play any DCE, so return just doesn't make sense for us in this deck. But if we get stuck with a handful of mystery energy, and that's what's happened, is where I'd have 3 mystery energies and no psychic, I can't attach that to Shaman. And so, and the truth is I'm rarely going to retreat Trevenant. In fact, he usually just stays up there until he dies, and then you bring the next one in, and you go from there. So it might just be best. I had 4 of these at one time. I think it was a 4-4 split, or maybe even a 4-5 split. But I've now just bumped it down to a 2-6 split, and I've even considered just moving this to 8, maybe even 7, just basic psychic energy. Could squeeze it down to 7 and then allow us to grab something else that we could use in our deck. Anyway, guys, so that is the Trevenant Break deck. I will do some battle videos like I always do for you coming up in the near future, so keep your eyes out for that. Hit like, subscribe, and please comment below. Tell me what you think of this deck. Anyway, this is Pokedad signing off. We'll talk to you later. Bye.